The moment my plane from Chicago touched down at Denver International, I called my wife. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, "just landed. Should be home in about 45 minutes. She laughed that familiar laugh and told me she'd made my favorite pot roast. "Love you," she said. "Love you too," I replied. I remember that because it was the last normal thing she ever said to me. My name is Ryan. I'm 41 years old, and I'm a structural engineer for a mid-size firm in Colorado Springs. I'd been in Chicago for 4 days inspecting a bridge project, the kind of trip I made every couple months. Nothing unusual. Nothing different. I was tired. I missed my wife Jenna, and all I wanted was a hot meal and my own bed. I pulled into our driveway around 7:30. The garage door wouldn't open. I pressed the remote 3 times, figured the battery died, and walked to the front door. My key didn't work. I tried it again, jiggled it, tried the back door key by mistake, then tried mine again. Nothing. I knocked. I could hear the TV inside. I knocked harder. Jenna's voice came through the door, muffled but clear. "I changed the locks, Ryan. You need to leave." I stood there like an idiot. I actually laughed because I thought she was joking. "Babe, come on, open up. What's going on?" "I'm not opening the door. There's someone behind you." I turned around and a guy in a windbreaker was walking up our front path. He handed me an envelope. "Ryan Caldwell, you've been served. Petition for divorce and a temporary protective order. You need to maintain 200 yards distance from this residence and from your wife." I looked at the papers. I looked at the guy. I looked back at the door. "Jenna, what is this? We need to talk about this. Please open the door." Silence. Then a police cruiser pulled up. The officer was polite but firm. "Sir, I need you to comply with the order and leave the premises. If you don't, I'll have to place you under arrest." I walked to my car with my neighbors watching from their porches. The Hendersons across the street, old Mrs. Patterson watering her roses, the Davis kids on their bikes. Everyone saw the cop. Everyone saw me leave my own house like a criminal. I drove to a Holiday Inn off Interstate 25 and sat on the bed staring at the wall until 2 in the morning. I kept reading the papers over and over. The petition alleged I was emotionally abusive and controlling, that I had threatened her, that she feared for her safety. None of it was true. I had never raised a hand to Jenna. I had never even raised my voice at her, not once in 6 years of marriage. The next morning, about 7 weeks ago now, I woke up at 5 and couldn't go back to sleep. I checked our joint savings account on my phone. Balance, $0.12. She had drained everything. $47,000 gone overnight. I called my boss, Dale Gunderson, to tell him I wouldn't be in. Dale was ex-military, ran a tight ship, zero tolerance for personal drama at work. I told him I had a family emergency. He grunted and said I'd better be in tomorrow or he'd dock my pay. No sympathy, no questions. I spent that first day in a fog. I needed a lawyer but didn't know any. The big firms in Colorado Springs wanted retainers I couldn't afford now that my savings were gone. I finally found a small practice downtown, Morrison and Beck. Harold Morrison, the senior partner, could see me that afternoon. Morrison was in his mid-60s, silver hair, reading glasses on a chain around his neck. He read through the papers carefully, then looked at me over those glasses. "Tell me the truth, son. Did you ever threaten your wife?" "Never. Not once." He nodded slowly. "Here's what I think happened, Ryan. This wasn't spontaneous. Getting a protective order takes preparation. She hired a lawyer, drafted the petition, got a judge to sign off, changed the locks, and emptied the bank account, all while you were in Chicago. This was planned weeks in advance." "But why?" I asked. "She told me she loved me 4 hours before I landed." Morrison didn't have an answer for that. But he referred me to a private investigator named Grace Chen, who worked out of an office 2 floors up in the same building. "She used to be FBI," he said. "If there's something to find, she'll find it." Grace Chen was not what I expected. She was maybe 35, dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt, with short black hair and a no-nonsense handshake. Her office had 3 monitors, a whiteboard covered in sticky notes, and a framed photo of what looked like her graduating class at Quantico. "Sit down," she said. "Tell me everything. Don't leave anything out." I told her. She listened without interrupting, took notes on a legal pad, and when I finished, she tapped her pen on the desk. "Your wife had a lover," she said flatly. I flinched. "You don't know that. I've seen this pattern 100 times. The sudden filing, the protective order to keep you away so you can't see who's coming and going, the drained bank account to pressure you into a quick settlement. She's got someone else, and she's clearing the decks. Give me a week." It only took her 4 days. Grace called me on a Thursday evening. I was eating a gas station sandwich in my motel room. "Come to my office tomorrow morning," she said. "Bring your stomach." She had footage. Our neighbor's Ring doorbell camera had captured a black Mercedes AMG pulling into our garage 17 times over the past 3 months. The same car, always arriving after dark, always leaving in the early afternoon the next day. Grace had run the plates. The car belonged to a man named Derek Hollister, co-founder of Hollister Keene Partners, one of the biggest real estate development firms on the Front Range. I knew who Derek Hollister was. Everyone in Colorado Springs knew him. His face was on bus benches and billboards all over town. He donated a wing to the Children's Hospital. He was on the board of the local arts council, and apparently he'd been sleeping with my wife 3 nights a week for the past 3 months. I wanted to drive to his office and break his jaw. Grace grabbed my arm. "That's exactly what Jenna wants," she said. "You show up at Hollister's office throwing punches, and suddenly, that protective order looks justified. You'll prove everything she claimed. You'll go to jail and she'll get everything." "So what do I do?" I asked. "I can't just sit here." Grace leaned back in her chair. "I have someone you should talk to. My associate, Tessa Park. She handles a different kind of problem." Tessa Park's office was down the hall. The door had a small sign that read Digital Reputation Management. Inside, it looked like a college dorm crossed with a NASA control room. 6 monitors, 2 laptops, a mini fridge covered in stickers, and a girl who couldn't have been older than 28 sitting cross-legged on a beanbag chair eating ramen noodles. She had dyed purple streaks in her hair and was wearing a hoodie that said, "Trust no algorithm." "You're the cheated husband," she said, not looking up from her noodles. "Apparently," I said. She set down the ramen and swiveled to face me. "Here's the thing, Ryan. Your wife set up a narrative. You're the abuser. She's the victim. Right now, that story is the only story. If we don't change it, that's the story the judge hears, your employer hears, your friends hear. You lose everything." "How do you change a story?" I asked. She grinned. "With a better story." Tessa explained her plan, and I hated every word of it. She wanted to make me famous on the internet. Not famous in a good way. Famous as the most pathetic, humiliated, heartbroken husband in America. She wanted to film me going back to my house, reenacting the night I got locked out, and push the footage to a massive YouTube gossip channel called The Neighborhood Watch with Nikki Novak. Nikki had 14 million subscribers and specialized in real-life drama stories. "You want to humiliate me on purpose," I said. She looked me dead in the eye. "You're already humiliated, Ryan. I'm just going to make sure it counts for something. Every good story has an arc. Right now you're at the top, about to fall. We need to push you all the way down so the climb back up hits harder." I still didn't fully understand, but I was out of options. Grace trusted her. Morrison trusted her. And honestly, what else was I going to do? Go back to my motel room and eat another gas station sandwich? 2 days later, Tessa filmed me at my own house. She had me walk up the driveway, try the door, knock, pound on it, stagger back when nobody answered. She caught every second of confusion and pain on my face. I didn't have to act. The emotions were still raw. When she had me do the slow walk back to the car, head down, shoulders slumped, I felt every step in my bones. "Don't worry," she said in the car afterward. "No names, no addresses, just the emotion. That's what goes viral." 3 days later, Nikki Novak aired the footage. She called me the locked-out husband. Her voiceover was devastating. "How many of you have come home to find your whole life changed?" This husband in Colorado came back from a business trip to find his wife had changed every lock, drained their savings, and filed a restraining order. Watch his face when he realizes it's over. The clip of me walking away from my own front door got 2 million views in 48 hours. And my life fell apart even faster. About a week after the first video aired, I walked into work and the receptionist wouldn't make eye contact. A group of junior engineers went silent when I passed. By lunchtime, someone had taped a printout of my face from Nikki's video to the break room refrigerator with the caption, "The locked-out husband," underneath. Dale Gunderson called me into his office at 3. "Ryan," he said, "this internet circus is becoming a distraction. I don't know what happened between you and your wife, and frankly, I don't care. But when your personal problems start affecting this office, that's my business. I've had 3 clients call asking if we employ the guy from the video. Dale, I never touched her. The restraining order is bogus." He held up his hand. "The company has a zero-tolerance policy on domestic issues. Effective immediately, you're terminated. 2-week severance. HR will send the paperwork. Brad will walk you out." I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, unable to start the engine. In less than 2 months, I had lost my wife, my home, my savings, and now my career. I was 41 years old, living in a motel, and the whole internet thought I was a monster. Tessa was waiting in her office when I got there. She already knew. I could tell by the look on her face. She sat me down, handed me a beer from the mini fridge, and said the words I least wanted to hear. "It's going to get worse before it gets better." But then she told me the rest of the plan. Phase 2 had always been the point. Getting fired wasn't just collateral damage, it was ammunition. She'd already contacted Morrison. Within 24 hours, Harold Morrison filed a wrongful termination lawsuit against my former employer for $8 million. The grounds were clear. They had fired me based on unverified allegations, conducted zero investigation, ignored their own employee handbook procedures, and effectively slandered me as a domestic abuser in front of the entire office. Meanwhile, Tessa was feeding Nikki Novak the next chapter. And about 3 weeks after the first video, Nikki's new episode dropped. I watched it on Tessa's big monitor. Nikki appeared on screen, her signature red glasses gleaming. "Remember the locked-out husband?" she began. Well, things just got very interesting. It turns out Mrs. Locked-Out might not be the innocent victim she pretends to be. Nikki showed the Ring doorbell footage. The black Mercedes pulling into the garage night after night. She revealed it belonged to prominent real estate developer Derek Hollister. She showed his smiling face from a charity gala, then cut to the Mercedes disappearing into my garage at 11 p.m. The internet exploded. Within a day, the hashtag #JusticeForLockedOut was trending. People who had mocked me a week ago were now apologizing in my comments. Nikki gained 200,000 subscribers from that single episode, and the story was just getting started. Jenna called me for the first time since the lockout. "I know it was you," she hissed. "You're going to regret this." I didn't respond. Tessa had told me not to engage. Meanwhile, Tessa dug deeper. She and Grace worked together, cross-referencing Jenna's background. What they found made me physically sick. About a month after the first video aired, Tessa sat me down with a folder. Grace had pulled court records from 4 different states. Jenna's real name wasn't Jenna Mitchell, the name she'd used when we married. She'd been born Jennifer Malloy in Reno, Nevada. Before me, she had been married 3 times. Not divorced 3 times. Married 3 times, to 3 different men, in 3 different states, sometimes overlapping. Husband number 1 was a dentist in Tucson. She cleaned out his retirement fund and disappeared. He thought she'd died until a credit card charge popped up in Salt Lake City 8 months later. Husband number 2 was a small business owner in Boise. Same pattern. Romantic whirlwind, quick marriage, drained accounts, vanished. He'd been so ashamed he never reported it. Husband number 3 was a software developer in Albuquerque. She took him for nearly $90,000 and filed a fraudulent domestic violence report to cover her tracks, exactly like she'd done with me. I wasn't her husband, I was her mark. Number 4 in a series. And here's the thing that really burned. She had never actually finalized the divorce from husband number 2, which meant our marriage might not even be legally valid. 6 years of my life with a woman I thought I knew, and it was all a con. 2 months after the original video, Nikki Novak aired the final episode. By now, the locked-out husband saga had become one of the biggest stories on her channel. She'd gained over 1 million new subscribers from it, and this last episode was the knockout punch. Tessa had packaged everything: the multiple marriages, the pattern of fraud, the fake identity. Grace had even found surveillance footage from a casino in Reno showing Jenna, or Jennifer, or whatever her real name was, meeting with Derek Hollister 6 months before she locked me out. They'd been planning this together far longer than anyone realized. Nikki's delivery was perfect. She laid it all out like a true crime documentary. "This wasn't a wife escaping an abusive husband," she said. "This was a professional con artist running a playbook she'd perfected over a decade. 4 husbands across 4 states. Hundreds of thousands of dollars stolen, fake identities, fraudulent court filings, and the man she accused of abuse? His only crime was trusting the wrong person." The response was overwhelming. Justice for Locked Out went viral again. News outlets picked up the story. A podcast about romance scams dedicated an entire episode to it. 3 of Jenna's former husbands came forward publicly after seeing Nikki's video, confirming everything. Here's where things moved fast. The Colorado Springs district attorney opened a fraud investigation. Derek Hollister, desperate to distance himself from the scandal, threw Jenna under the bus and cooperated with investigators. Turned out he and Jenna had also been running a separate scheme, using shell companies to flip properties with forged documents. The FBI got involved. My wrongful termination case settled out of court for $7.2 million. Morrison called me into his office, and I could tell he was trying not to smile. "They didn't want this going to trial," he said. "Not with your face on every screen in America. The company would have looked like the villains of the century." After legal fees and taxes, I walked away with just over $3.5 million, more money than I'd ever imagined having. Jenna tried to come back to me about a week before the DA filed charges. She showed up at Morrison's office crying, saying she'd made a terrible mistake, begging me to drop everything. She even wore the dress from our anniversary dinner. I looked at her and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no love. Just emptiness, where a person used to be. I said one thing to her: "You should watch tonight's episode of Nikki's show." Then I walked out. That night, Nikki aired the final chapter, the serial con artist unmasked, the FBI investigation. The other husbands coming forward. Jenna, watching from our house, which would soon be seized as part of the fraud investigation, screamed so loud the neighbors heard. Now let me tell you about Tessa. I'd been spending almost every day in her office since getting fired. At first, it was purely professional. She was managing my story, monitoring social media, coordinating with Nikki. But somewhere between the late-night pizza deliveries and the early morning coffee runs, something shifted. Tessa had her own scars. She'd told me about her ex, a guy named Sean, who she'd been with since college. He'd gambled away their savings and left her with $40,000 in credit card debt before disappearing to Portland with his personal trainer. That's why she got into reputation management, she said, because she knew what it felt like to have someone destroy your life and walk away smiling. About 3 weeks after I moved into the spare room of her office, which she'd converted into a small apartment years ago because she practically lived there anyway, we were eating Thai food on the floor, and she looked at me and said something I'll never forget. When I met you, I thought you were just another clueless husband. Now I think you might be the most decent man I've ever known. I kissed her. She kissed me back. Then she pulled away and said she needed time. I gave her time. About a week later, after my settlement came through, I asked her to dinner at the Broadmoor. She spent 4 hours getting ready, which was remarkable because in the 3 months I'd known her, I'd never seen her wear anything except hoodies and sneakers. She came out in a dark green dress and heels, and I literally did not recognize her. Over dinner, I told her the truth. My settlement was $7.2 million. She dropped her fork. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to think I was trying to buy your affection, I said. She laughed and shook her head. Ryan, I've been eating ramen and sleeping on a beanbag chair for 3 years. If you were trying to buy me, you could have started with a mattress. I asked her if she wanted to leave Colorado Springs with me. Start fresh somewhere new. Maybe the Pacific Coast. Maybe New England. Maybe somewhere neither of us had ever been. She asked how long I wanted her to come for. I said forever, if she'd have me. She grabbed my hand across the table and said the only correct response. About damn time, you asked. 3 days ago, we packed up her office. Grace and Morrison threw us a small going-away party. Grace gave Tessa a coffee mug that said Reputation Destroyer. Morrison handed me an envelope with the final paperwork on my case and shook my hand. You came into my office 2 months ago with nothing, he said. You're leaving with everything that matters. Yesterday morning, Tessa and I loaded up my truck and headed west on Highway 24. As we passed the exit for our old neighborhood, Jenna's neighborhood now, though not for much longer, I saw the for sale sign in front of the house. 3 squad cars were parked in the driveway. I didn't slow down. Tessa was scrolling through her phone in the passenger seat. She looked up and grinned. Nikki just posted the finale numbers. 18 million views. She's sending us a gift basket. I squeezed her hand and kept driving. Somewhere past Buena Vista, with the collegiate peaks rising white against a blue sky, she leaned over and rested her head on my shoulder. You know what the best part is? She murmured. What's that? She didn't take your dignity, Ryan. She tried, but she couldn't. You walked away from your own front door that night with nothing, and you still had the one thing she could never steal. What's that? I asked again. Who you are, she said. I drove west into the mountains, and for the first time in months, I didn't look back. Last I heard, Jenna, or Jennifer, or whoever she'll call herself next, was out on bail and had already skipped her first court date. The FBI issued a warrant. 3 ex-husbands have filed civil suits. Nikki Novak dedicated a follow-up episode to warning people about romance scammers, and it's already been viewed 26 million times. Derek Hollister lost his company, his board seat at the Children's Hospital, and his wife. She filed for divorce the day Nikki's video aired. Poetic, isn't it? As for me, Tessa and I found a little house on the Oregon coast, near a town called Cannon Beach. I'm doing consulting work remotely. She's running her reputation management business from our kitchen table, which now has actual chairs instead of beanbags. Every morning we drink coffee on the deck and watch the Pacific Ocean. It's not a bad life. Sometimes I think about that night at the front door, the key that didn't fit, the voice behind the door telling me I didn't live there anymore, the officer telling me to leave, the walk to the car while my neighbors watched. That was the worst moment of my life. But it was also the beginning of the best chapter, because sometimes losing everything is the only way to find out what you actually need. And if you're out there right now, sitting in a motel room, eating a gas station sandwich, staring at papers you never expected to receive, I want you to know something. The story isn't over. You're just at the bottom of the arc. And the only direction from the bottom is up. Trust me, I know.